Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Facade. Wesley Garcia stood at his kitchen window, watching his 9-year-old daughter Emma chase their golden retriever around the backyard. The morning sun cast long shadows across their manicured lawn in suburban Colorado, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. He'd built this life brick by brick. The successful construction company, the beautiful home, the family that neighbors envied. Coffee's getting cold. Monique called from behind him, her voice carrying that familiar edge that had grown sharper over the past year. Wesley turned to face his wife of 12 years. At 34, Monique still turned heads with her striking features and carefully maintained figure. Her dark hair was pulled back in a perfect ponytail, not a strand out of place, even at 7 in the morning. But Wesley had learned to read the subtle signs, the tightness around her eyes, the way she held her shoulders when she was planning something. "Thanks, babe." He accepted the mug, noting how she avoided his touch. "You seem excited about today's adventure." Monique's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Emma's been begging to explore those caves for months. I figure it was time." She paused, studying his face. "You don't mind us going without you? You know I trust you with her completely." The words felt heavy on his tongue. Once that trust had been absolute. Now, something nagged at him. A contractor's instinct for structural weakness that had served him well in business. Emma burst through the back door, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Daddy, Mommy says we're going to be real explorers today." Wesley scooped her up, breathing in the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo. "You listen to your mom, okay? And stay safe." "I will." Mommy packed the coolest flashlight. It's super bright. Over Emma's head, Wesley caught Monique watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read. For 12 years, he'd thought he knew every expression that crossed his wife's face. Now he wondered what else he'd missed. After breakfast, Wesley helped load their gear into Monique's SUV. 2 backpacks, water bottles, energy bars, and a heavy-duty flashlight that had cost him nearly $200. Everything looked standard for a day of cave exploration. "The weather report looks good," he said, double-checking the straps on Emma's pack. "Should be perfect conditions." "Perfect," Monique echoed, though something in her tone made Wesley glance up sharply. But she was already climbing into the driver's seat, her expression neutral. Emma hugged him tight before buckling into her booster seat. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, sweetheart. Take lots of pictures." As Wesley watched them drive away, the feeling in his gut intensified. He'd survived 2 decades in construction by trusting his instincts about people and situations. Right now, those instincts were screaming. He spent the morning reviewing blueprints for a new commercial project, but couldn't concentrate. Finally, he called his foreman, Brandon Barker, and told him to handle the site inspection alone. Brandon had been his right hand for 8 years and could run the company in his sleep. "You feeling all right, Wes?" Brandon's gravelly voice carried concern. "You never take Saturdays off. Just want to be available if the girls need anything." Wesley rubbed his temples. "They're exploring some caves up in the mountains. Those caves can be tricky. My cousin got lost up there last summer. Took search and rescue 6 hours to find him." The words hit Wesley like a punch to the gut. "Which caves?" "The whole network up past Miller's Peak. Lot of unmapped passages." "What?" Wesley was already reaching for his keys. "I'll call you back." The drive to the mountains took 45 minutes, and with each mile, Wesley's unease grew. He'd proposed to Monique at Miller's Peak 7 years ago. She knew these trails better than anyone. So why hadn't she mentioned the caves were dangerous? He parked at the trailhead where Monique's SUV sat empty, doors unlocked. Inside, he found Emma's favorite stuffed elephant, the one she never left behind on important adventures. His blood ran cold. Wesley had made it halfway up the main trail when his phone rang. Chapter 2. The Call. "Daddy." Emma's voice was small and echoing, as if she were speaking from inside a tunnel. "Emma, sweetheart, where are you?" "We're in the cave, but something's wrong." Mommy broke my flashlight. She said it was an accident, but..." Emma's voice wavered. "Daddy, she's putting rocks by the entrance. Big ones. I can't move them." Wesley's world tilted. What do you mean she's blocking the entrance? She told me to call you. She said to tell you. Emma's voice broke into sobs. Daddy, I'm scared. It's getting dark and I can't see very good. Emma, listen to me. I'm coming to get you, okay? Can you see any light? Any way out? There's a little crack, but it's too small. Mommy said she had to fix something she should have done a long time ago. What did she mean, Daddy? Wesley was already running back toward his truck. Don't worry about that now. Just stay exactly where you are. Keep talking to me. But the line went dead. With shaking hands, Wesley called Monique. She answered on the first ring. Having a nice Saturday? Her voice was calm, almost cheerful. Monique, what the hell are you doing? Let Emma out of there right now. I should have done it 9 years ago. The words were delivered with chilling matter-of-factness. But I was weak then. I thought I could make it work. Done what 9 years ago? Monique, Emma is your daughter. A bitter laugh. Is she Wesley? Really? The implication hit him like a sledgehammer. Wesley had to pull over as the world spun around him. What are you talking about? Check your math, genius. Emma was born exactly 7 months after our wedding. You remember Harvey Christian, don't you? Your old business partner. Harvey Christian. The name brought back a flood of memories. The man who'd helped Wesley start his construction company, then disappeared with $50,000 in Wesley's trust. The man whose betrayal had nearly destroyed everything Wesley had worked for. He came to me before the wedding, Monique continued. Told me he loved me. Wanted me to run away with him. I chose you instead. Such a stable choice. Such a good provider. Wesley's mind raced. Harvey had vanished 10 years ago, just months before Emma was born. He'd always assumed the timing was coincidental. But Emma looks like me, he whispered. Does she? Or have you just been seeing what you wanted to see? Images flashed through Wesley's mind. Emma's green eyes, so different from his brown ones or Monique's blue. Her delicate bone structure. The way she moved, nothing like his own solid, practical frame. Even if that's true, Wesley said, forcing strength into his voice, she's still my daughter. I raised her. I love her. I know. That's what makes this so perfect. The line went dead. Wesley immediately called 911, then Mountain Rescue. Within an hour, the mountainside swarmed with emergency personnel. Wesley led them to the cave entrance, where they found a wall of carefully placed rocks sealing the opening. Professionally done, observed Colin Holmes, the rescue team leader. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. This is going to take hours to clear safely. As night fell, Wesley paced the command post like a caged animal. Search teams had found Monique's body at the bottom of a ravine 2 miles away, an apparent fall while hiking alone. The official story was already forming. Tragic accident, grieving mother, heartbroken family. Only Wesley knew the truth. At 11:47 p.m., Colin Holmes approached him with an expression Wesley would never forget. We've cleared the entrance, Holmes said quietly. We found your wife. Wesley's heart leaped. And Emma? Holmes looked away. I'm sorry, sir. But your daughter, she's no more. The world went silent. Wesley felt something inside him break. Not just break, but shatter into 1,000 jagged pieces that would never fit back together. But as he stood there, surrounded by the concerned faces of rescue workers and the flashing lights of emergency vehicles, one thought crystallized in his mind with absolute clarity. This wasn't over. Chapter 3, The Investigation. The funeral was held on a Tuesday in October. Wesley stood at the graveside, dry-eyed and hollow, accepting condolences from neighbors who had no idea what really happened. Emma's small white coffin disappeared into the earth, taking with it the last innocent piece of his heart. Monique's coffin sat beside it. Wesley had insisted on the joint service, not out of love, but because it fit the narrative everyone expected. The grieving widower, burying his wife and daughter together after a terrible accident. I'm so sorry for your loss, said Susan Nelson, their neighbor. Monique was such a devoted mother. Wesley nodded numbly. If only she knew. 3 weeks later, Wesley sat in the office of Ronald Lee, the best private investigator in Colorado. Lee was a former FBI agent with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. I need you to investigate my wife's death, Wesley said without preamble. Lee raised an eyebrow. The police ruled it accidental. Mountain rescue confirmed the sequence of events. What makes you think otherwise? Wesley had been preparing for this question. My wife was an expert hiker. She knew those mountains better than anyone. She doesn't just fall off a cliff. Grief can make us look for explanations where there aren't any. She murdered my daughter. The words came out flat and hard. I need you to prove it. Lee studied him for a long moment. That's a serious accusation. What evidence do you have? Wesley had spent weeks thinking about this. He couldn't reveal Emma's phone call without incriminating himself. Why hadn't he called rescue immediately? Why had he driven to the mountains first? Any lawyer would tear apart his timeline. Start with Harvey Christian, Wesley said instead. He was my business partner 10 years ago. He disappeared around the time Emma was born. You think there's a connection? I think my wife had secrets. I want to know what they were. Lee's fee was expensive, but Wesley didn't care. Money had lost all meaning. He authorized a comprehensive investigation into Monique's life, her communications, her financial records, everything. While Lee worked, Wesley threw himself into planning. He'd built a successful business by thinking 3 steps ahead of everyone else. This would be no different. First, he needed to understand exactly what Monique had done. The official story was that she'd gone hiking alone after securing Emma safely in a cave chamber, planning to return with additional equipment. She'd fallen to her death, and by the time rescue arrived, Emma had succumbed to exposure and dehydration. The timeline supported this narrative. Monique's body had been found hours before the cave was fully cleared. Emma's final phone call to him had been explained as a brief moment when cell service reached into the cave before cutting out entirely. But Wesley knew better. He'd heard the terror in Emma's voice, the deliberate cruelty in Monique's. This hadn't been a hiking accident. It was calculated murder designed to look like a tragic mishap. The question was why. 2 weeks later, Lee called with his first report. Found your Harvey Christian. He's been living in Arizona under the name Harvey Clark. Runs a small construction company in Tucson. Is he Emma's father? DNA would confirm it. But circumstantially, it's possible. He left Colorado exactly 9 months before Emma was born. Wanting to make contact? Not yet. Keep digging. Lee's second report was more illuminating. Your wife was in contact with someone in Arizona for the past year. Encrypted messaging app, but I was able to trace the general location. Same city where Harvey Christian is living. Wesley felt the pieces clicking together. What were they planning? Still working on that. But I found something else interesting. Your wife had a life insurance policy you don't know about. $2 million, purchased 18 months ago. The beneficiary isn't you. Who? A trust fund for Emma Garcia. But here's the kicker. If Emma predeceases the policyholder, the money goes to a secondary beneficiary. Want to guess who? Wesley's blood ran cold. Harvey Christian. Bingo. But there's more. Your wife also had a substantial debt you don't know about. Gambling addiction, looks like. She owed some very serious people in Denver about $300,000. The picture was becoming clearer. Monique had been planning this for months, possibly years. The insurance policy, the secret communications with Harvey, the mounting debt, it all pointed to a woman desperate enough to murder her own child for money. But Wesley still needed proof. And more importantly, he needed Harvey Christian. I want you to keep monitoring Harvey, Wesley told Lee. But don't approach him yet. I need more information first. What kind of information? Wesley smiled for the first time in weeks. It wasn't a pleasant smile, the kind that will destroy him. That night, Wesley sat in Emma's room, surrounded by her toys and drawings. On her desk was a picture she'd drawn of their family, stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. She'd labeled each figure in careful block letters, Daddy, Mommy, me. But now Wesley noticed something he'd missed before. In the drawing, the figure labeled Mommy stood slightly apart from the other two, her stick arms reaching not toward her family, but toward something off the edge of the paper. Even a 9-year-old had sensed the distance. Wesley carefully folded the drawing and put it in his wallet. Then he opened his laptop and began researching everything he could about Harvey Christian, gambling debts, and how to destroy someone's life so completely they'd beg for mercy. He had time. He had money. And now he had purpose. Harvey Christian had helped Monique murder Emma for insurance money. Now, Wesley was going to show them both what real planning looked like. Chapter 4. The Hunter Becomes the Hunted. 3 months after the funeral, Wesley Garcia looked nothing like the man who had buried his wife and daughter. He'd lost 30 pounds, traded his comfortable jeans and flannel shirts for sharp business suits, and developed the lean, predatory look of someone who'd learned to hunt. His construction company continued running smoothly under Brandon Barker's management, generating the steady income Wesley needed for his real work. Because make no mistake, hunting Harvey Christian had become his full-time job. Ronald Lee's investigation had uncovered a web of deceit that went back years. Harvey hadn't just stolen $50,000 when he disappeared. He'd been systematically embezzling from their joint accounts for months before vanishing. The total theft was closer to $200,000. Money Wesley had assumed was lost to bad investments and market fluctuations. But the real revelation was Harvey's pattern. This wasn't his first time. He's done this before, Lee explained during their weekly meeting. At least 3 other times in different states. Establishes a business partnership, gains trust, then disappears with whatever he can steal. Classic long-term con artist. Wesley studied the files spread across Lee's desk. What about the other partners? 2 went bankrupt. 1 committed suicide. Lee's expression was grim. Your Harvey Christian leaves bodies in his wake. Not Harvey Christian anymore. You said he goes by Harvey Clark now. Complete identity change. Social security number, driver's license, the works. Professional job. This isn't his first reinvention. Wesley leaned back in his chair, thinking. So Monique wasn't his first victim either. Probably not. I've traced communications between them going back almost 2 years. She wasn't just planning to cash in the insurance money. She was planning to disappear with him afterward. Except she died in that ravine. Lee nodded grimly. Which means Harvey's still out there, waiting for his payday. The insurance company is still investigating the claim, but eventually they'll have to pay out. Wesley had been counting on that. How long do we have? Maybe 6 months before the money releases. Unless we can prove fraud. We're going to do better than that. Wesley's voice carried a cold certainty that made even Lee uncomfortable. We're going to prove murder. Over the next month, Wesley implemented a plan that would have impressed his old business professors. First, he hired a second private investigator, Keith Platt, a specialist in surveillance who operated out of Arizona. Platt's job was simple. Watch Harvey Christian around the clock and document everything. Meanwhile, Wesley began his own infiltration. Harvey's construction company in Tucson was small, but successful, specializing in residential remodels. Through a series of shell companies and false identities, Wesley arranged for Harvey to receive several lucrative job offers, all from the same fictional client. The client was supposedly Marshall Andrews, a wealthy retiree looking to flip houses in the Tucson market. Marshall needed a local contractor for a major renovation project, 6 figures minimum, with the possibility of ongoing work. Harvey took the bait immediately. Wesley's first phone conversation with his wife's killer was surreal. Harvey's voice was deeper than he remembered, roughened by years of cigarettes. But the underlying arrogance was unchanged. Mr. Andrews, I appreciate you considering my company, Harvey said. Can I ask how you got my name? Wesley had prepared for this question. A mutual friend recommended you. Said you were the kind of contractor who understood discretion. Discretion? I prefer to keep my investments quiet. Too many people asking questions about money. You know how it is. Harvey chuckled. I understand completely. What would you like to meet? They arranged to meet at a coffee shop in downtown Tucson the following week. Wesley spent days preparing his Marshall Andrews identity, complete with fake references, a carefully constructed background, and most importantly, the subtle tells that would mark him as a man with money to steal. The meeting exceeded Wesley's expectations. Harvey Christian had aged well in his 10 years of hiding. His hair was shorter and streaked with gray. He wore expensive glasses, and he developed the smooth confidence of a man who'd perfected his craft. But Wesley saw through the facade immediately. This was still the same man who'd stolen his money, seduced his wife, and helped plan his daughter's murder. The project I have in mind is ambitious, Wesley explained, sliding a folder across the table. Complete renovation of a historic property. Budget is flexible, but I'm looking at around $300,000 to start. Harvey's eyes lit up. That's substantial. Most of my projects are in the 50 to 100 range. Unlike most clients, I believe in paying for quality work. Wesley leaned forward conspiratorially. And I believe in working with people who understand that sometimes the paperwork doesn't need to be comprehensive. It was a delicate dance, suggesting illegal activity without explicitly stating it. Harvey was smart enough to read between the lines. I think we could work something out, Harvey said carefully. When would you want to start? Soon, but I need to know I can trust you. Wesley pulled out a second folder. I've done my research on your company. Very impressive growth in a short time. Harvey's smile tightened slightly. I've been fortunate. Fortunate indeed. Starting over in a new state, building from nothing. That takes real skill. For just a moment, Wesley saw a flicker of concern cross Harvey's face. But Harvey was too experienced to break character. I believe in fresh starts, Harvey said evenly. So do I. Wesley smiled. In fact, I'm planning a few fresh starts of my own. My wife passed away recently, and I'm looking to make some major life changes. I'm sorry for your loss. The words were delivered with perfect sincerity, and Wesley had to grip his coffee cup to keep from reaching across the table. This man had helped murder Emma, and now he was offering condolences with practiced sympathy. Thank you. It's been difficult, but I'm focused on the future now. They spent another hour discussing the fake project, with Harvey becoming increasingly confident that he'd found his next mark. By the time they parted ways, Harvey was already planning how to steal from Marshall Andrews. He had no idea that Marshall Andrews was planning something far worse for him. That evening, Wesley called Keith Platt for an update. Your boy's definitely planning something, Platt reported. After he left, he made 3 phone calls. First to a lawyer, probably checking on insurance payments. Second to someone he called Baby, female voice, sounded intimate. Third to a number I traced to a forger in Phoenix. A forger? High-end document specialist. The kind of guy who makes people disappear permanently. Wesley felt a cold satisfaction. Harvey was accelerating his timeline, probably planning to collect the insurance money and vanish again with a new identity. Keep watching him. I want to know everyone he talks to, everywhere he goes. You got it. But Wes, this guy's dangerous. Whatever you're planning, be careful. Wesley stared out his hotel window at the lights of Tucson. Somewhere out there, the man who'd helped kill his daughter was making plans for a new life built on Emma's blood money. But Harvey Christian had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed Marshall Andrews was just another victim. He was about to learn the difference between a predator and prey. Chapter 5. The Web Titans. Wesley's second meeting with Harvey took place at the supposed renovation site, an abandoned warehouse Wesley had rented under the Marshall Andrews identity. He'd spent the previous week transforming part of it into a convincing construction office, complete with blueprints, material samples, and the kind of expensive equipment that would make Harvey's eyes gleam with avarice. Impressive setup, Harvey said, running his hand along a display of imported tiles. You're serious about quality. I don't believe in half measures. Wesley spread architectural plans across a makeshift conference table. The timeline is aggressive. I want the work completed in 6 months. Harvey studied the blueprints with professional interest. This is a massive project. You're talking about a complete gut renovation, new electrical, plumbing, HVAC systems. Money isn't the issue. Finding the right contractor is. What about permits? A project this size will require city approvals, inspections. Wesley waved dismissively. I have people who handle those details. Your job is the construction work. It was another careful hint about illegal activity. Harvey was smart enough to recognize the implication. This was a cash job with minimal oversight, exactly the kind of opportunity he specialized in exploiting. I need a substantial deposit to order materials, Harvey said carefully. Probably 50% up front. Not a problem. Wesley pulled out a briefcase and opened it to reveal neatly stacked bills. $50,000 to start. Another $50,000 when materials arrive. The balance on completion. Harvey's pupils dilated slightly at the sight of so much cash. Wesley had counted on that reaction. Greed was Harvey's weakness, just as it had been when he'd stolen from their original company. This is very generous, Harvey said, his voice carefully controlled. "I believe in incentivizing excellence." Wesley closed the briefcase. "But I need assurance that you can handle the discretion aspect. This project needs to stay private." "Of course. I understand the importance of client confidentiality." "Good. Because I've had problems with contractors in the past. One in particular, Harvey Christian. Ever hear of him?" Harvey's face remained perfectly composed, but Wesley caught the tiny muscle twitch beneath his left eye. "Doesn't ring a bell. Probably before your time. This was up in Colorado about 10 years ago. Guy seemed trustworthy, but he disappeared with a significant amount of money." "That's terrible. You can't trust anyone these days." Wesley nodded sympathetically. "The worst part was what happened to his family. His business partner's wife and daughter died in a hiking accident just last year. Tragic coincidence." This time Harvey couldn't quite hide his reaction. His hand tightened imperceptibly on the edge of the table, and his breathing shifted slightly. Wesley had spent months learning to read these micro-expressions, the tiny tells that revealed a liar's stress. "Hiking can be dangerous," Harvey said carefully. "Indeed, especially when you're not familiar with the terrain." Wesley locked eyes with Harvey. "But I suppose people who make a habit of disappearing learn to navigate all kinds of dangerous territory." The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken threat. Harvey was beginning to understand that Marshall Andrews wasn't quite what he seemed. "Well," Harvey said finally, forcing a smile, "I appreciate the trust you're placing in me. When do you want to start?" "Immediately." Wesley slid a contract across the table. "Standard terms, but with some specific clauses about confidentiality and timeline penalties." Harvey reviewed the document quickly, too quickly. A more cautious man would have taken it to a lawyer, but Harvey was driven by greed and the growing suspicion that he needed to wrap this up fast. "Looks acceptable," he said, reaching for a pen. As Harvey signed the contract, Wesley felt a grim satisfaction. Phase 1 was complete. Harvey Christian had just legally committed himself to a fictional construction project, providing Wesley with documentation of Harvey's willingness to engage in shady business dealings. But more importantly, Harvey had revealed his psychological state. He was nervous, off balance, and making increasingly desperate decisions. The insurance money couldn't come soon enough for him. Over the following weeks, Wesley played his role perfectly. He met with Harvey regularly, discussing progress on the fake renovation while slowly tightening the psychological pressure. Each meeting included subtle references to his tragic loss and the mysterious disappearance of Harvey Christian from Colorado. Meanwhile, Keith Platt surveillance was revealing Harvey's growing desperation. The phone calls to lawyers were becoming more frequent. Harvey had started drinking heavily and had gotten into several heated arguments with the woman Platt had identified as his girlfriend, Sabrina Fitch, a cocktail waitress with expensive tastes and flexible morals. "He's cracking," Platt reported during one of their weekly calls. Yesterday, he spent 3 hours at a gun range, then drove around aimlessly for 2 more hours. Classic paranoid behavior. "What about the forger contact?" 2 more meetings. "Your boy's definitely planning a disappearance. I got photos of him reviewing documents. Looked like identity papers for someone named Henry Clark." Wesley almost smiled at the irony. Harvey was so predictable. Even his fake names followed the same pattern. But Wesley's real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Ronald Lee had been investigating the other end of the conspiracy, focusing on Monique's activities before her death. "I found something interesting," Lee announced during their monthly meeting. "Your wife wasn't just planning to disappear with Harvey. She was planning to eliminate him." Wesley looked up from the surveillance photos he'd been reviewing. "What?" "I finally cracked her encrypted communications. The plan was more complex than we thought. She would fake Emma's death in the cave accident, collect the insurance money, then meet Harvey in Mexico to start their new life together. But she'd also been in contact with some very dangerous people in Denver, the same ones she owed gambling debts to. She'd arranged for Harvey to have an accident shortly after they collected the money." Wesley felt a cold chill. Monique had been planning to murder Harvey too. So the fall was really an accident? Lee shook his head. "That's where it gets interesting. I don't think she fell. I think Harvey pushed her." The implications hit Wesley like a sledgehammer. He found out about her plan? Must have. Think about the timeline. She blocks Emma in the cave, then goes to meet Harvey at a predetermined location. Maybe she got careless, revealed too much about her backup plan. Harvey realizes she's going to betray him, so he kills her first. Wesley stared at the wall, his mind racing. That means Harvey Christian murdered both your wife and your daughter. Monique may have sealed Emma in that cave, but Harvey left her there to die. The revelation changed everything. Wesley had been planning to destroy Harvey financially and psychologically, then expose him to law enforcement. But this was bigger than fraud and embezzlement. This was a double homicide, and Wesley was going to make sure Harvey paid for both deaths. Chapter 6. The Trap Springs. The insurance company finally released the $2 million on a cold Tuesday in March, exactly 8 months after Emma's death. Wesley learned about it from Keith Platt's surveillance report. Harvey had received a phone call from his lawyer at 3:47 p.m., followed immediately by a bottle of expensive champagne and a celebration dinner with Sabrina Fitch. Wesley stared at the surveillance photos of Harvey raising a toast. This man was celebrating Emma's death. He's planning to move fast, Platt reported over the phone. My contact at the document forger says Harvey picked up a complete identity package yesterday. Driver's license, passport, social security number, the works. Name is Henry Clark. How long before he runs? Days, maybe a week at most. He's already started liquidating assets. Wesley had been preparing for this moment for months. Everything was in place. It's time, he told Platt. Execute Phase 2. Phase 2 began with a phone call to Harvey's hotel room at 2 a.m. Harvey Christian, Wesley said when Harvey answered, his voice groggy with sleep. There was a long silence. Then, who is this? Someone who knows what you did to my daughter. Wesley hung up before Harvey could respond. The psychological warfare had begun. Over the next 3 days, Wesley systematically dismantled Harvey's sense of security. Anonymous messages appeared under Harvey's hotel door. His car was broken into, nothing stolen, but personal items rearranged in ways that made it clear someone had been there. Phone calls at random hours. Always the same message. I know what you did. Keith Platt documented Harvey's increasing paranoia. The man barely slept, checked his hotel room obsessively, and had started carrying a gun. More importantly, he'd accelerated his timeline. The planned departure was now set for Friday night. Wesley was counting on it. Thursday evening, Harvey received a final message. Warehouse. Midnight. Come alone, or I go to the police. The warehouse was the same location where Wesley had met Harvey as Marshall Andrews. But this time, Wesley had made some modifications. He arrived 2 hours early, using a key he'd had made months earlier. The construction office he'd built was gone, replaced by something far more sinister. Floodlights illuminated a single chair in the center of the empty space. Hidden cameras captured every angle. And most importantly, all exits were now electronically controlled. At 11:58 p.m., Harvey entered through the main door. He moved cautiously, gun drawn, scanning the shadows. Hello, Harvey. Wesley's voice echoed from speakers placed throughout the warehouse. Harvey spun, searching for the source. Where are you, you coward? Right here. Wesley stepped into the pool of light, empty hands visible. He'd spent months preparing for this moment, visualizing it, planning every word. Harvey raised his gun. Marshall Andrews, I presume? Or should I call you Wesley Garcia? You should call me Emma's father. Harvey's face twisted into an ugly smile. Emma Garcia isn't your daughter, Wesley. Never was. She was mine. I know. Wesley's voice remained steady. And you killed her anyway. I didn't kill anyone. That was all Monique's plan. But you left her to die. After you pushed Monique off that cliff, you could have called rescue services. You could have saved a 9-year-old girl. Instead, you went home and waited for the insurance money. Harvey's gun hand trembled slightly. You can't prove anything. Wesley smiled. Actually, I can. The warehouse filled with sound, recordings of Harvey's phone calls, obtained through methods that weren't quite legal, but were absolutely thorough. Harvey's voice discussing the insurance policy, coordinating with Monique, planning the accident. But the most damning recording was Harvey's conversation with Sabrina Fitch 2 days after the accident. She got greedy, baby. Started talking about eliminating loose ends. So I eliminated her first. What about the kid? What about her? She was never supposed to survive anyway. Harvey's face went white as his own words echoed through the warehouse. You recorded me, he whispered. I recorded everything. Every phone call, every meeting, every moment of your pathetic life for the past 6 months. Wesley pulled out a tablet, showing Harvey the surveillance footage. I have evidence of fraud, conspiracy, and double homicide. Enough to put you away for life. Harvey raised his gun again. Then I guess I'll have to kill you too. With what? Wesley held up a small device. The bullets I replaced in your gun 3 days ago, they're blanks, Harvey, just like everything else about you. Harvey pulled the trigger. The gun clicked empty. Wesley had spent weeks planning this moment, but he'd underestimated the satisfaction of watching Harvey's face crumble as he realized how completely he'd been outmaneuvered. You see, Harvey, I learned something important about you. You're a coward. You only attack people who can't fight back. Business partners who trust you, women who love you, children who depend on you. Wesley began walking forward, and Harvey backed away. But you made one mistake. You killed my daughter, and I'm not someone who can't fight back. Harvey stumbled backward, his empty gun clattering to the floor. What do you want? Justice. Wesley pulled out his phone and dialed 911. I'd like to report a murder, he said calmly. The suspect is here with me now, along with complete evidence of his crimes. As sirens wailed in the distance, Harvey collapsed into the chair Wesley had placed in the center of the warehouse. The fight had gone out of him completely. Ow! Harvey whispered. Wesley looked down at the man who'd helped kill his daughter. You forgot something important, Harvey. I built my business on planning and execution. You steal and run. I build things that last. The police found Harvey Christian exactly where Wesley said he'd be, sitting in a warehouse chair, surrounded by evidence of his crimes, confessing to everything in a broken, rambling monologue. By dawn, Harvey was in custody, charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and multiple counts of fraud. Wesley Garcia stood in his hotel room, watching the sunrise over Tucson, and felt something he hadn't experienced in 10 months. Peace. But his work wasn't finished yet. Chapter 7, Justice Served. The trial of Harvey Christian became a media sensation. The story had everything journalists loved: insurance fraud, murder, betrayal, and a methodical quest for justice that captured the public imagination. Wesley sat in the front row every day, watching as prosecutors presented the evidence he'd spent a year gathering. The surveillance footage, the recorded conversations, the financial records, every piece of the puzzle he'd carefully assembled. Harvey's defense attorney, Edwin Roberts, tried to paint Harvey as the victim of an elaborate frame-up, but the evidence was overwhelming. Harvey had made too many mistakes, left too many trails, trusted too many people who ultimately turned on him. The most damning testimony came from Sabrina Fitch, Harvey's girlfriend, who had agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. She described Harvey's confession in chilling detail. How he'd pushed Monique off the cliff when she revealed her plan to eliminate him. How he'd deliberately left Emma to die in the cave. How he'd celebrated the insurance payout. He said the kid was never supposed to survive anyway. Sabrina testified, refusing to look at Harvey. He said it was better this way, cleaner. Wesley watched Harvey's face during that testimony. The man who'd once been so smooth and confident now looked hollow, aged 10 years in the past 12 months. Prison hadn't been kind to him, but Wesley wasn't satisfied with just seeing Harvey convicted. He'd spent the past year building something much more comprehensive. During the trial's recess periods, Wesley met with other victims of Harvey's previous schemes. The FBI investigation had uncovered Harvey's full pattern of fraud going back 15 years. Dozens of victims across multiple states, millions of dollars stolen, lives destroyed. Wesley had organized them into a cohesive group, hiring lawyers, coordinating testimony, and most importantly, ensuring that Harvey would face justice for every single crime he'd ever committed. You've done something remarkable here, said Agent Joey Hendricks, the FBI investigator leading the multi-state case. Most fraud victims never get justice. Harvey Christian will spend the rest of his life in prison. But Wesley's most important victory came on a Tuesday in September, when the judge read Harvey's sentence. For the murders of Monique Garcia and Emma Garcia, you are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the additional counts of fraud and conspiracy, you will serve consecutive sentences totaling an additional 40 years. Harvey Christian would die in prison. As the judge's gavel fell, Wesley felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he'd been carrying for almost 2 years. Emma's death was finally answered, but justice took many forms. In the months following Harvey's conviction, Wesley turned his attention to the broader implications of the case. The insurance company that had paid out Monique's fraudulent policy faced a civil lawsuit that Wesley had been carefully preparing. The gambling debts that had driven Monique to murder led to investigations of illegal betting operations in Denver. Most importantly, Wesley established the Emma Garcia Foundation, dedicated to cave safety education and search and rescue equipment funding. The foundation's first major donation bought advanced communication equipment for mountain rescue teams, technology that might have saved Emma if it had existed 2 years earlier. Wesley threw himself into the foundation's work with the same methodical intensity he'd brought to hunting Harvey Christian. Within a year, the foundation had funded rescue equipment for 12 states and trained hundreds of volunteers in cave safety protocols. "You've turned your tragedy into something positive," observed Dr. Nancy Joyce, a child psychologist Wesley had hired to help design the foundation's educational programs. "Emma would be proud." Wesley nodded, though the pain of Emma's absence was still sharp. He'd learned to carry that pain, to transform it into purpose rather than let it consume him. But late at night, alone in the house that had once echoed with Emma's laughter, Wesley allowed himself to remember. He kept Emma's room exactly as she'd left it, her drawings on the desk, her stuffed animals arranged on the bed, her favorite books stacked on the nightstand. On the anniversary of her death, Wesley sat in that room and read her favorite story aloud, the same way he used to when she was alive. It was a ritual that kept her memory vivid, a way of honoring the daughter who had been stolen from him. "I got them, sweetheart," he whispered to the empty room. "I got them both." Through the window, the mountains where Emma had died rose against the starlit sky. Wesley had climbed to those caves once, after the trial, to stand where his daughter had spent her final hours. He'd found peace there, finally understanding that justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about ensuring that Emma's death had meaning, that other families wouldn't suffer the same loss. Harvey Christian would spend the rest of his life in a concrete cell, forgotten by everyone except the victims whose lives he destroyed. Monique was buried in an unmarked grave, her name associated only with betrayal and murder. But Emma Garcia was remembered differently. Schools used her story to teach children about safety and trust. Rescue teams carried equipment purchased in her name. Families stayed safe because of lessons learned from her death. Wesley had kept his promise to his daughter. He made sure that justice was served and that her death saved other lives. It wasn't the ending he'd wanted, but it was the ending Emma deserved. Chapter 8, The Reckoning. 2 years after Harvey Christian's conviction, Wesley Garcia received an unexpected visitor at his construction company office. The woman was in her mid-40s, well-dressed, but carrying herself with the careful posture of someone who'd survived trauma. "Mr. Garcia, my name is Therese Schultz. I was Harvey Christian's first wife." Wesley looked up from the foundation paperwork he'd been reviewing. Since Emma's death, he'd gradually transitioned from day-to-day construction management to running the Emma Garcia Foundation full-time, though he maintained his office at the company Brandon Barker now managed. "Please sit down." Wesley gestured to the chair across from his desk. "What can I do for you?" Therese hesitated before speaking. "I wanted to thank you for what you did to Harvey, and to tell you about what he did to our son." Wesley felt his chest tighten. He had a son, Danny. He would be 16 now. Therese's voice was steady, but Wesley could see the years of pain in her eyes. "Harvey disappeared when Danny was 4. I spent years thinking he'd just abandoned us. I never knew." She trailed off, pulling out a newspaper clipping about Harvey's trial. "When I saw this story, everything made sense. The way he'd been acting before he left. The phone calls he wouldn't explain. He wasn't just running away from us. He was running toward his next victims. Wesley leaned forward. What happened to Danny? He grew up believing his father didn't love him enough to stay. Do you know what that does to a child? The questions, the self-doubt, the anger. Wesley thought about Emma's drawings, how even at 9 years old she'd sensed something wrong with her family. Children saw more than adults gave them credit for. Where is Danny now? Juvenile detention, unfortunately. He's been acting out for years, fighting, stealing drugs. I think he's been looking for his father, even after all this time. Therese pulled out a photograph of a teenage boy with Harvey's eyes, but a harder expression. The resemblance was unmistakable. I was wondering if there was a way Danny could be part of your foundation's work. Not the administrative side, but the field work. He needs purpose, structure, something to show him that his father's actions don't define who he has to become. Wesley studied the photograph. He'd focused so intensely on punishing Harvey that he'd never considered the collateral victims. The children Harvey had abandoned, the families he'd destroyed beyond just financial theft. Tell me about Danny's interests, Wesley said. Over the next hour, Therese painted a picture of an intelligent but troubled teenager who'd excelled at rock climbing and outdoor activities before his legal troubles began. Danny had natural leadership abilities but used them destructively, organizing other troubled teens in increasingly dangerous schemes. The probation officer says he needs intensive mentorship, Therese explained. Someone who can channel his energy into something positive. Wesley made a decision that would have surprised the man he'd been 3 years earlier. Bring Danny to Colorado. I want to meet him. 2 weeks later, Wesley stood at the edge of a climbing facility in Denver, watching a lanky teenager scale a 40-foot wall with fluid grace. Danny Schultz moved like a natural athlete, but Wesley could see the anger in every controlled movement. He doesn't trust adults, Therese warned quietly, especially men. When Danny finished his climb, Wesley approached him directly. Nice technique. You ever been cave climbing? Danny studied him warily. You're the guy who put my father in prison. I'm the guy who proved your father murdered a 9-year-old girl. The bluntness clearly surprised Danny. Most adults try to soften difficult truths when talking to teenagers. So what do you want from me? Danny asked. Nothing, but I might have something to offer you. Wesley explained the Foundation's search and rescue training programs, the partnership with mountain rescue teams, the real work of saving lives in dangerous terrain. You think I want to help people? Danny's voice carried years of accumulated cynicism. I think you want to prove you're nothing like your father. Danny's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the pain underneath. How do you know what I want? Wesley pulled out his wallet and showed Danny Emma's drawing, the stick figure family with the slightly separated mother figure. Because my daughter spent years trying to understand why her mother didn't love her the way she deserved. She died believing something was wrong with her, instead of understanding something was wrong with the adults who were supposed to protect her. Danny stared at the drawing for a long time. What happened to your daughter wasn't your fault, Wesley continued. What your father did to your family wasn't your fault either. But what you do with the rest of your life, that is your choice. 3 months later, Danny Schultz was living in a halfway house in Colorado Springs and working as a junior instructor for the Emma Garcia Foundation's youth safety programs. The transformation wasn't instant or complete. Danny still struggled with trust issues and periodic anger outbursts, but he'd found purpose. Wesley watched from a distance as Danny taught a group of younger kids proper climbing techniques, correcting their form with patience that would have seemed impossible 6 months earlier. He's good at this, observed Scott Wallace, the Foundation's head of field operations. Natural teacher. The kids respond to him. Wesley nodded. Danny had channeled his need to lead into something constructive, becoming a mentor for teenagers who were walking the same dangerous path he'd once followed. But Wesley's satisfaction came from something deeper than just successful rehabilitation. In helping Danny, Wesley had finally found a way to transform Harvey's legacy from pure destruction to something redemptive. Harvey Christian had abandoned his son, murdered Wesley's daughter, and destroyed countless lives in his pursuit of easy money. But Danny Schultz was now saving lives, teaching children to be safe, creating the kind of positive impact Harvey had never even attempted. It was Wesley realized the most complete form of justice possible. Harvey's bloodline would be remembered not for his crimes, but for his son's commitment to undoing the damage Harvey had caused. That evening, Wesley called Ronald Lee, the private investigator who'd helped build the case against Harvey. "I need you to find more of them," Wesley said. "More of what?" "Harvey's other victims. The families he destroyed. The children he abandoned. I want to help them all." Lee was quiet for a moment. "That could be dozens of people, Wes. Maybe more. Then we'd better get started." Wesley hung up the phone and returned to Emma's room, where he kept the Foundation's most important files. On her desk, next to the drawing of their family, sat letters from parents thanking the Foundation for safety equipment that had saved their children's lives. Emma would never see her 10th birthday, but her death had prevented dozens of other tragedies. Harvey Christian would spend the rest of his life in prison, but his son was growing into the kind of man Harvey never could have been. It wasn't the ending Wesley had planned when he'd first started hunting Harvey Christian, but he realized exactly the ending Emma would have wanted. Justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about redemption, transformation, and ensuring that good ultimately triumphed over evil. Wesley Garcia had learned the difference. Chapter 9. The Legacy. 5 years after Emma's death, Wesley Garcia stood before an audience of search and rescue professionals at the National Mountain Rescue Conference in Denver. The Emma Garcia Foundation had become a leading advocate for cave safety and rescue technology, funding equipment and training that had prevented dozens of tragedies. Every year, Wesley said to the assembled crowd, "We respond to hundreds of cave emergencies. Most end safely because of proper preparation, good equipment, and trained response teams. But some don't. Today I want to tell you about one that didn't, and why it changed everything about how we approach cave safety." Wesley had told Emma's story hundreds of times now, but it never got easier. He learned to control his emotions, to focus on the lessons rather than the loss, but the pain remained sharp. What had changed was his understanding of that pain's purpose. In the audience, Danny Schultz sat in the front row, now 21 and working as the Foundation's lead field coordinator. Next to him sat 3 other young adults, children of Harvey's previous victims, all of whom had found purpose in the Foundation's work. After the presentation, Wesley was approached by a woman he didn't recognize. She was elderly, with silver hair and the weathered hands of someone who'd spent a lifetime working outdoors. "Mr. Garcia, I'm Laverne Riley. I lost my grandson in a cave accident in Utah 3 years ago. The equipment your foundation donated might have saved him if it had been there 6 months earlier." Wesley had heard variations of this story many times. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Riley. I wanted you to know that his death wasn't meaningless. The new protocols they developed after the accident, using your foundation's research, have already saved 2 other children. Your daughter's death led to changes that saved my grandson's death from being repeated." Wesley nodded, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility that came with transforming tragedy into progress. "But that's not why I'm here," Laverne continued. "I'm here because of what you did to Harvey Christian." Wesley's attention sharpened. "What do you mean?" "My husband was one of Harvey's victims, back in Nevada 15 years ago. Lost everything. Our ranch, our savings, our retirement. He died of a heart attack 2 years later, brought on by the stress of losing everything we'd worked for." Wesley felt a chill of recognition. Harvey's trail of destruction went back further than anyone had realized. When Harvey went to prison, I thought that was the end of it. Justice served, case closed. But what you've done since then, helping his son, supporting other victims' families, building something positive from all that pain, that's real justice. Laverne pulled out a worn photograph showing a younger version of herself with a man Wesley assumed was her late husband. They were standing in front of a ranch house, smiling with the confidence of people who believed their future was secure. "Harvey stole our money, but you gave us back our faith in justice. That matters more than any amount of restitution could." After the conference, Wesley drove to the mountains where Emma had died. It was a ritual he'd maintained for 5 years, visiting the cave entrance on the anniversary of her death to update her on the Foundation's progress. The cave entrance was now sealed and marked with a memorial plaque, "Emma Garcia, her memory saves lives. The site had become an unofficial pilgrimage destination for families affected by cave accidents, a place where loss transformed into determination. Wesley sat on the stone bench the foundation had installed and pulled out his annual letter, a tradition he'd started the first year after her death. "Dear Emma," he read aloud to the empty mountainside. "This year the foundation prevented 43 cave accidents through better equipment and training. The communication system we developed saved 8 children who got lost in Kentucky caves. The Danny Schultz Scholarship Program helped 12 kids from broken families find purpose in search and rescue work." The list went on. Lives saved, families helped, communities strengthened. Each achievement had grown from the soil of Emma's death, transforming her murder into a force for protection and healing. "Harvey Christian died in prison last month," Wesley continued. "Lung cancer." Danny didn't attend the funeral, but he sent flowers with a note. "For the father I never had, from the man I became despite you." Wesley folded the letter and placed it in the memorial box beside the plaque. Inside were similar letters from all 5 years, creating a record of how Emma's death had rippled outward into countless acts of kindness and protection. As the sun set behind the mountains, Wesley felt a presence he'd learned to recognize. Not supernatural, but the weight of purpose that came from living up to Emma's memory. His phone buzzed with a text from Brandon Barker. "New cave rescue in Wyoming. 3 kids trapped. Local team has our equipment. Initial reports suggest successful extraction likely." Wesley smiled. Somewhere in Wyoming, 3 children would go home safely to their families because Emma's death had led to better equipment and training. Harvey Christian was dead, but his victims lived on through their commitment to preventing future tragedies. Monique was forgotten, but Emma's name was spoken with respect and gratitude across the search and rescue community. Wesley had learned something important in his years of pursuing justice. The best revenge wasn't destroying your enemies, but building something so positive that their evil was ultimately irrelevant. Harvey had tried to steal, murder, and destroy his way to happiness. Wesley had built, protected, and created his way to peace. Standing up from the memorial bench, Wesley took one last look at the cave where his daughter had died. The site that had once represented his greatest failure now symbolized his most important victory, not just over Harvey Christian, but over the despair that could have consumed him. Emma Garcia had died at 9 years old, but her influence would last forever. That was the kind of legacy Wesley could live with. As he drove down the mountain road toward home, Wesley's phone rang. It was Danny Schultz. "Wesley, we got a call from Oregon. Family with a missing teenager somewhere in the Cascade Caves. Local rescue needs our communication equipment. I can have a team there by tomorrow." "Go," Wesley said. "Save them. Always do." Wesley smiled as he hung up the phone. Emma's story continued with every life saved, every family protected, every tragedy prevented. Harvey Christian's story had ended in a prison cell. Wesley Garcia's story was just beginning. The Emma Garcia Foundation continues to operate today, having prevented over 200 cave-related accidents through improved safety equipment, training programs, and emergency communications technology. Danny Schultz serves as its executive director, having transformed his father's legacy of destruction into a lifetime commitment to saving lives. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.